If you or your husband wore a uniform for this country before 1990, I need you to stop scrolling right now because the government has been sitting on a benefit worth over $2,000 a month, and most veterans and their widows go their entire lives never knowing it exists. I'm not exaggerating when I say this could be the most important 5 minutes you spend all year. And before I tell you exactly how this works, hit that subscribe button because I dig up the money the government doesn't advertise, and you deserve to know every single dollar that has your name on it. Let's be honest with each other for a second. You spent years, maybe decades, serving this country or standing beside someone who did. You raised a family on a military paycheck that was never quite enough. You watched prices climb every single year while your fixed income stayed flat. And now, in the years when you should finally be able to breathe a little easier, you're doing math at the kitchen table instead, trying to figure out how the electric bill and the prescription copay and the property tax are all going to fit into the same month. You feel like nobody in Washington is thinking about you. You feel like every time you turn on the news, they're talking about everybody except the people who actually built this country and defended it. I understand that frustration because it's real. And it's justified. And today, I'm going to hand you something that can actually change your monthly numbers. Here's what almost nobody tells veterans and their families. There is a pension program, separate from your VA disability compensation, separate from Social Security, that was specifically designed for wartime veterans and their surviving spouses who need a little extra help covering the cost of daily living. It has nothing to do with whether you were wounded in combat. It has nothing to do with whether you filed a disability claim. It is based on your service, your income, and your need. And depending on your situation, it can add more than $2,000 a month to your household. Most people who qualify have never even heard the name of this program. I'm going to tell you exactly what it's called, exactly who qualifies, and exactly how to check if that money is sitting there waiting for you. But first, you need to understand the full picture, because the rules here are unusual, and if you don't know them, you will assume you don't qualify when you actually do. Let's start with the foundation, because this is where most veterans get confused and give up before they even try. The Department of Veterans Affairs runs several different benefit programs, and people mix them up constantly. There's VA disability compensation, which pays you based on injuries or illnesses connected to your service. That's the one most veterans know about. But there's a completely different program called the VA pension, sometimes called the Veterans Pension or the Survivor's Pension if you're a widow or widower. This one isn't about combat injuries at all. It's a needs-based benefit for wartime veterans who are now 65 or older or who are permanently disabled for any reason and whose income and savings fall below a certain level. Think about that for a second. You didn't have to be shot at. You didn't have to be injured on duty. You just had to serve during a recognized wartime period and now find yourself living on a limited income in your later years. That describes an enormous number of American seniors. And yet the VA itself has said for years that this pension is one of the most underused benefits they offer. Now here's the part that surprises almost everyone, and it's the reason I opened with the year 1990. To qualify for this pension based on wartime service, you don't need to have seen combat. You simply need at least 90 days of active duty, with at least one day falling during a period Congress has officially designated as wartime. Those periods include World War II, the Korean conflict, the Vietnam era, and the Gulf War era, which the VA currently defines as beginning in August of 1990 and continuing today. That means if your active duty service touched any of those windows, even if you never left American soil, even if your job was supply, communications, maintenance, or administration, you may already meet the service requirement. This is why so many veterans assume they don't qualify. They think, I never saw combat, so this isn't for me. But the VA doesn't ask what you did during that window. It asks whether you served during it. I told you there was another surprising layer coming, and here it is. This pension isn't only for veterans. If your spouse served and has since passed away, you, as the surviving spouse, may qualify for what's called the survivor's pension, sometimes still referred to by its older name, the death pension. This exists specifically because the VA recognized that military widows and widowers, often living alone in their later years on a single fixed income, are among the most financially vulnerable seniors in the country. If your husband or wife wore the uniform during one of those wartime periods and you have not remarried, you may be entitled to a monthly payment in your own name, even decades after their passing, even if they never filed for VA benefits themselves while they were alive. Let that sink in for a moment. Thousands of widows are living paycheck to paycheck right now, unaware that their late husband's wartime service could still be putting money in their pocket today.
Now, let's talk about the number that gets everyone's attention, because I promised you a real dollar figure, and I intend to deliver on that. For a veteran with no dependents, who also qualifies for what's called aid and attendance, meaning you need regular help with daily activities like bathing, dressing, meal preparation, or you're a patient in a nursing home, or your eyesight has significantly declined, the maximum annual pension benefit currently sits well above $30,000 a year. Break that down, and you're looking at a payment that can exceed $2,500 every single month, on top of whatever Social Security or other retirement income you already receive. For a veteran with a spouse to support, the number climbs even higher. For a surviving spouse who qualifies for aid and attendance, the monthly figure often lands right around that $2,000 mark I mentioned at the very beginning. These are not hypothetical numbers pulled from thin air. These are the government's own published maximum annual pension rates, and while your exact amount depends on your countable income and your care needs, the ceiling is real, and it's substantial.
You're probably asking yourself right now, if this benefit is this generous, why haven't I ever heard of it? And that's a fair question, so let me give you an honest answer. Part of it is that the VA pension has strict income and asset limits, and those rules changed significantly back in 2018. Which means a lot of veterans who checked years ago and were told they made too much money or had too many assets might actually qualify today under the current rules. Part of it is that this program simply doesn't get marketed. There's no commercial for it during the evening news, there's no flashy campaign. It exists quietly in VA regulations, and it's up to veterans and their families to go looking for it. And frankly, part of it is that many veterans have a certain pride, a feeling that they don't want to ask for help, that this benefit is somehow charity rather than something they earned through their service. I want to gently push back on that feeling right now. You didn't ask the country for a favor when you put on that uniform. This program exists because the nation made a promise that if you served during a time of war and you later found yourself struggling to make ends meet in your senior years, there would be something there to catch you. Claiming it isn't charity. It's collecting on a promise that was made to you decades ago.
Let's go a little deeper, because I want you to actually understand how the income test works, since this is where most people talk themselves out of applying before they've even tried. The VA doesn't just look at your gross income. They look at your countable income, and that number can be reduced by unreimbursed medical expenses, including things like Medicare premiums, prescription costs, in-home care, assisted living costs, and even hearing aids or dental work. This means a veteran who looks like they earn too much on paper can still qualify once their medical expenses are properly counted against their income. I've seen situations where a veteran's Social Security check alone seemed to disqualify them. But once their monthly Medicare premium, their supplemental insurance, and their prescription costs were subtracted, they dropped well below the limit and qualified for a substantial monthly pension. This single detail, the medical expense deduction, is the reason so many veterans who assumed they didn't qualify actually do. If you take nothing else away from this video, take that.
There's one more piece of this puzzle that deserves your full attention, and it's the aid and attendance and housebound benefit I mentioned earlier, because this is what pushes the monthly payment from modest to genuinely life-changing. If you need help with the basic activities of daily living, if you're essentially confined to your home due to a disability, or if you're currently in a nursing facility because you can no longer safely care for yourself, you may qualify for an additional payment on top of the base pension. This is the piece that takes the benefit from a few $100s a month to well over $2,000 a month for many veterans and surviving spouses. And here's the part that stuns people every time I explain it. You do not need to be a combat veteran. You do not need a service-connected disability rating. And the condition causing your need for aid does not need to be related to your military service at all. Age-related decline counts. A fall that led to reduced mobility counts. Needing help managing your medications counts. The VA is simply asking, right now, in your daily life, do you need help? And is your income low enough that this program is meant to support you?
I want you to really sit with what this means for a moment, because this is the emotional truth underneath all these numbers. You spent your younger years serving a country that asked everything of you and gave you a modest paycheck in return. You came home, you built a life, you raised children, you paid your taxes, and now in the very years when your body needs more help and your fixed income stretches thinner every single year, there is a benefit sitting in the VA's own regulations that exists specifically for people in your exact situation, and it is criminally underused. Veteran service organizations and elder law attorneys who specialize in this area consistently report that the majority of veterans and surviving spouses who would qualify have simply never applied, either because they didn't know the program existed or because they were told years ago they didn't qualify under rules that have since changed.
So here's what I want you to actually do with this information, because knowledge without action doesn't pay a single bill. If you or your spouse served at least 90 days of active duty, with any portion falling during World War II, Korea, Vietnam, or the Gulf War era beginning in August of 1990, and you're now 65 or older or permanently disabled, and your income is limited, you owe it to yourself to look into the VA pension and aid and attendance benefit. If you're a surviving spouse of a veteran who served during one of those periods and you haven't remarried, you owe it to yourself to look into the survivor's pension in your own name. Contact your local Veterans Affairs Regional Office. Reach out to a Veterans Service Officer through organizations like the VFW, the American Legion, or Disabled American Veterans, who will help you file at no cost to you. Or speak with an elder law attorney who focuses specifically on veterans' benefits if your situation involves a nursing home or significant medical expenses. Do not pay a company that promises to fill out this paperwork for a large upfront fee. Accredited veteran service officers do this work for free, and they do it well, because helping veterans get what they earned is literally their job.
You gave this country years of your life. Your spouse may have given this country years of theirs. That kind of sacrifice deserves more than a thank you and a handshake. And this pension exists precisely because Congress agreed with that sentiment. You have earned the right to check whether this money belongs to you. And I promise you, the checking costs nothing but a little bit of your time. If this video opened your eyes to something you didn't know before, do me a favor and subscribe, because I'm going to keep digging up the benefits the government doesn't put on a billboard, and there is more coming that you need to hear. And please, don't keep this to yourself. Share this with your spouse, your brother, your sister, your neighbor down the street who served in Vietnam. Anyone you know who wore the uniform and is now living on a tight budget. You might be the reason someone you love finally gets the check they've been owed for years. You served your country once. Let your country finally serve you back.